the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this beautiful Saturday night. I hope night in the East Coast, this afternoon over here. I hope you're all having a good time. Good Saturday, good weekend. It's going to be depressing today, but I knew I'd get a lot of people on the show if I made it about something related to the election. So here we are. We're going to talk about we're going to talk about what a Biden administration is going to look like. Is this the end of the world? To what extent is it? To what extent it is not? What is the political future of this country? How do we get out of the mess that we're in? Where are we? I mean, the polls clearly show, or at least seem to show, and you can argue with the polls all you want. The polls clearly show that Biden looks like he's going to win. Also, the polls seem to show that Republicans are going to lose the Senate, and Democrats will actually increase their majority in the House. So, at least according to the polls right now, it appears that the Democrats are going to do phenomenally well come election night, and Republicans are going to get crushed. And in spite of my dislike of Trump, right? I'm not happy about this at all. As I've told you all along, it's scary to have the Democratic Party control all the levers of power and control it in a landslide where they get basically a mandate from the people to pursue their agenda. So, I still hope Republicans can hold on to the Senate, but my hopes seem to be, the polls at least suggest that these hopes are unrealistic at this point, at least. We will see. I know many of you still believe that Trump can pull it off and win. Maybe. Never say never, I guess, but it looks more and more unlikely. All right. One of the things we've got going today, which is exciting, we've got a Super Chat match. We're going to match, or Ragnar of the Desert, I think he's here. Ragnar of the Desert, I haven't seen him on the chat yet, but he should be here. Ragnar of the Desert is going to match every Super Chat contribution today up to $500. So we have the potential to get $1,000 on the show today, which is a significant amount. There goes Jason. That's $20. That's already 40. It's already 40 multiplied, so it's multiplied by 2. Thank you, Jason. So we are going to be. So Ragnar of the Desert, there he is. He's there. Ragnar of the Desert, who matched last month, did a $500 match, and we went way over $1,000. So I'm hoping we can do the same thing today. Anything you contribute today will be matched dollar for dollar up to $500, so we can go to $1,000, and hopefully we can go even higher. So, I'll remind people as we go. I'll remind people of this. Of course, Ragnar's going to have to get his calculator out and calculate the different currencies from which you guys make your contributions. There's some British pounds I see. That's good, because that's British pounds. A pound is worth more than $1. Although a pound has been sinking lately because of the Boris Johnson's latest shutdown. All right, so we need to get we're $45. We've got $455 to go to make up the, and it feels like I'm on a telethon or something, giving you the countdown. But yes, and you don't have to ask a question. You can make a contribution. Ragnar of the Desert will match every dollar that you contribute today through Super Chat up to $500. So, well, there we go, Manuel. Thank you. Well, $100. That'll get us a long way there. Jonathan, thank you. Yes, Jonathan mentions, and he's absolutely right, and this is a great time to mention it, as we're talking about election and politics and everything else. If you want to know Ayn Rand's views on the issues of politics, Ayn Rand's views on the system of politics that is America, then Jonathan edited a book called A Textbook on Americanism, and I encourage you to buy it. It's available on Amazon. And it is, I've got an essay in there. You've got some material from Leonard Peikoff. You've got some rarely seen material from Ayn Rand. And you've got some essays from a large number of leading objectivist intellectuals in the volume. So I encourage you to seek it out and to and read it. And, it's a great foundation for our understanding of the objectivist politics and how to apply it to the context of today. It's a good starting point. All right. Leonard Peikoff has an essay in that book. Leonard Peikoff, of course, has a lot of other work, which is unbelievably valuable, and you should all be reading, which of Ominous Parallels, and of course. OPA, which is a systemized presentation of a philosophy of objectives and the philosophy of Ayn Rand, and the dim hypothesis. So all of those are excellent resources for understanding the politics, as are most of Leonard Peikoff's courses, his old radio shows, and his podcasts. All right, let's see. Let's do some of these super chat questions before we get rolling into the subject. Give some people time to show up. Jonathan, thank you. I was suggesting Jimmy zoned out. You're not supposed to zone out during my show. You should, just for zoning out, you should be penalized with like a $5-10 super chat. But I was recommending Jonathan Honing's edited book on textbook on Americanism, which has a big essay by Ayn Rand and a lot of other very valuable essays, including one of mine. And then I was recommending Leonard Peikoff's books, Ominous Parallels, OPA, Objectives and the Philosophy of Ayn Rand, as well as the dim hypothesis. All right, let me copy over some of these questions, and we'll take some of the $20 questions, get them off the table, and then we can go into the depressing topic of Joe Biden and. Joe Biden and his world. No, thank you. So we got $262 to go, guys. $262 to match the match, to get the full $500 match from Ragnar of the Desert. He will keep track of it and let us know in the super chat as we go. If you're on Facebook and you'd like to participate in the exciting telethon going on right now to support the Iran Book Show, it's happening. The action is on YouTube. It's not on Facebook. So you should head over to YouTube and come participate in the super chat over there. Just go to Yaron Brook on the YouTube channel. Okay, do you see signs of Ayn Rand eroding Immanuel Kant in academia and at the culture at large? Did nihilism as a cultural force not exist before Kant? It's a good question about did nihilism exist before Kant. My guess is yes. My guess is nihilism has always existed. Probably there were even nihilists going back to the Greeks, but I don't know enough about I don't know enough about. Whoops. Let me delete that. I don't know about the history of philosophy to tell you who the philosophers were who would be laying the foundation in the more ancient times for nihilism, but certainly culture was quite nihilistic even before Immanuel Kant. In terms of, is Ayn Rand eroding Immanuel Kant in academia? Not much, not in academia. I think what's eroding Immanuel Kant in academia is just time, the inconsistencies within his own theory. The problem is, what is the alternative? And, if it's postmodernism or if it's other forms of, wow, what the hell is going on here? If it's postmodernism or other forms of a nihilistic philosophy that's based in a sense on Kant, but based on kind of a rejection of all philosophy, then it doesn't help us much. So I don't know that objectivism or Ayn Rand has had enough of an impact yet, certainly in academia. I think culturally she has. I think culturally many of the good things that have happened in the culture over the last 50 years were the consequence of Ayn Rand's philosophy eroding the impact. But Kant is still winning. There's no question. We are still a minority. We're still a minority voice. There's still a lot of work to be done. There's still a lot of heavy lifting to do. And it's going to take some time to get to the point where we are undoing the damage and maybe reverse the damage that Kant has done. All right. For those of you joining late, we do have a Super Chat match up to $500. Any dollar you contribute up to $500 will be matched by, would be matched by Ragnar of the Desert. So very generous of Ragnar, and help him out. Help us out. We're I think like 250 short, so we're about halfway to where we need to be. Hi, Ron. I recently got a master's degree. It was the first time I took something seriously in my life. Thanks for providing moral clarity. Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, and I'm glad you got the master's degree, and I'm glad you're taking things seriously in your life and make this a beginning of something. Yeah, all right, we'll do that. All right, do intellectuals on the left and right not like Rand because deep down they think they're smarter than anyone and should be controlling other people to some degree? I mean, some of them do to some degree, but a lot of them, they haven't read Ayn Rand. Many of them don't like Ayn Rand because she turns upside down everything that they believe and everything they've been taught and everything that they have staked their professional lives on, and she challenges all of that. So I think that's part of it. I also think it's part they don't understand it, they don't get it, they don't quite, they can't really comprehend the philosophy because it is so challenging to their pre-existing belief system, and it's hard for them to completely integrate. And yeah, many of them believe they're smarter than everybody else. Not smarter than Ayn Rand necessarily, but they're smarter than anybody else. And they should be running people's lives. They are. This is a long tradition. They are Plato's philosopher kings. They view themselves as such. And many of them are just nihilists. Many of them are corrupt, and they want power over other people. So some of them don't have a reason other than their power lust. It's like Ellsworth Toohey in The Fountainhead. If you've ever read The Fountainhead, if you haven't, you should. They want to control you, and they want to control you not because they think they're smarter than you, because actually they don't have any self-esteem. And they only gain their pseudo self-esteem by thinking that they can control you, right? All right. Let's see. Just copying over some of these questions. Questions are rolling in. At some point, I'm going to stop with these, answering these, and go into the topic, and then we'll come back to them at the end. Good. Ian just asked all right, we got a couple of questions on Peikoff. Keep the Peikoff questions coming. I'm actually going to answer them. So you're going to get my answer on the whole Peikoff question. I know many of you are here just to supposedly get me. So we're going to take that on. All right. So keep asking Peikoff questions. I'll put them all together, and then I'll answer them at once if you have more questions around Leonard Peikoff's comments on voting for Trump. All right, let's do some of these quickly. Do you agree that leftists in the U.S. and UK have a liking for Islamic ideology? If you agree, what is common ground that they share to have such liking? No, I don't think they have common liking to Islamic ideology. I think they support the Islamists because their altruism demands it. They support the Islamists because the one thing they share is hatred of Western civilization. They support the Islamists. Thank you, Chad. That goes a long way to getting us to our matching. And I'm glad to see that some people appreciate my show on Bill Gates, because I know that some people hate what I have to say about Bill Gates. So I appreciate that. Thank you. So they share hatred of the Western civilization. That's what they share with the Islamists. It's not that they share an appreciation of Sharia law or their views of women or any of their other specific philosophical views. It is really more that they share hatred, that they share denialism, that they share the wanting to blow things up, that they share destruction, and particularly, again, destruction and hatred of the West, of civilization, of secular society, but secular society built on reason and science and achievement and capitalism. Islamists hate capitalism. The left hate capitalism. That's the commonality. The commonality is they hate the same things. That's what makes them like each other. It's not really anything positive, right? You'd think, for example, the attitude of the Islamists towards gays and women would rule them out, but they have far more common on the hatred side with the far left, and that's what bonds the far left to them. Is Joe Rogan's impression that objectivists are mean, worthless, or is there something to learn? There's definitely something to learn. I think some objectivists are mean. Some objectivists come off as rationalistic, detached from reality, obnoxious, and I think that he's probably met those objectivists, and I think they've turned him against objectivism, which is why he won't have me on, I think, because he assumes that that's who I am. So I think you have to, first of all, there's nothing obnoxious about objectivism. There's nothing mean about objectivism. And there's nothing detached from reality about objectivism. So, we have to be grounded in what objectivism really is, and don't project your own psychological issues on objectivism, or don't use the fact that you've got psychological issues to kind of, so people don't, try not to be obnoxious. People are not going to agree with you. So try to explain it to them in a context that they hopefully find reasonable, and it makes it possible for them to agree. All right, let's see. What else do we want? Okay, so I think there is something to it. Be professional. Act professionally. And think about the context of the person you're talking to when you talk to them. I have no idea which objectivist Rogan meant, but he said, I think a number of times now, that he doesn't want to have anything to do with objectivists because they're mean and they're not nice people and so on. I have no idea who he's referring to, but that's his impression, unfortunately. And because of that, I think one of the consequences of that is he won't have me on. Is San Francisco a nicer, more sophisticated city than LA and Orange County? Well, I mean, if you took away the homeless people, then San Francisco would be an interesting place to live because it's beautiful. I don't think it's more sophisticated. It's more energetic. It's more production oriented because, Salesforce is there with the skyscrapers. It's got Twitter and Facebook and Google. So it's very energized. It's young. It's a young city. A lot of young people. A lot of young, very productive people. But it's also got this massive homeless problem, which basically, in my view, makes San Francisco unlivable. I mean, I thought that was 20 years ago, and it's much, much worse today than it was 20 years ago. I mean, there's literally human poop everywhere. It's really a disgusting city today, even though it is. If you take away the homeless people, it's the most beautiful, one of the most beautiful city, maybe one of the three most beautiful cities in the world. It's stunningly beautiful, but policy matters, and it cosmopolitan. Look, Orange County is not a city. Orange County is certainly not but all California is very cosmopolitan. You have a lot of cultures there, and San Francisco is a great food city. It's got fantastic food. For a foodie, it's one of the best cities ever. All right, so I am going to. Okay, we've got 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm going to do one more question. Then I'm going to do some Leonard Peikoff questions, and I'll take the $20 Biden question, and then I'm going to leave the questions for a little later after we've had some talk about Biden, because I did promise we talk about Biden and a potential Biden administration. All right, here we go. We got 3 questions related to Leonard. Leonard Peikoff, just said on video he's proudly voting for Trump. I'm willing to bet he would have a video discussion with you about it. When Peikoff referenced the person who said Trump voters couldn't be objectivist, is it possibly he meant your comment that Trump apologists couldn't be objectivists? Without getting too personal, what is your most memorable moment with Leonard Peikoff in your professional career with him? All right, let me say a few things about Leonard. Few things about Leonard. Leonard and I have been, I would say, friends. More than that, I'd say close friends for 25 years. Now, I don't talk about Leonard much. Certainly, I don't talk about my personal relationship with Leonard Peikoff because, frankly, it's none of your business. It's not a public thing. It's me and Leonard are friends. And yet, at the same time, we sometimes disagree, as friends do. Even friends who share a philosophy, as we do. We don't disagree about philosophy. We indeed, I wouldn't dare to disagree with something in philosophy with Leonard. Leonard is the master. He is the teacher. He is my teacher. In many respects, Leonard Peikoff taught me objectivism. Now, I was an objectivist before I met Leonard Peikoff. Before I considered myself an objectivist and was certainly dedicated to Ayn Rand before I knew Leonard Peikoff existed. But I took his courses, OPA. I didn't understand objectivism until I read OPA. OPA was my real deep dive into objectivism and into understanding of objectivism and into really integrating objectivism into my life. I couldn't have done it with OPA. I read OPA when it first came out. When was it? 91, I think. Yes, 91. Next year is the 30th anniversary of the publication of OPA. I got to meet Leonard briefly in 1987, before some of you were born, I guess. And got to get to know him very briefly in 1987, but got to know him much better starting in 1993. During the 90s, I was one of his students at the Objectivist Graduate Center. I studied with him. We also landed up hanging out a lot. We also landed up becoming close friends. We did things together. We traveled in Europe together in the early 2000s. We share a love of music. We share a love of classical music. We share a love of opera and operetta. We used to go regularly to the Los Angeles Opera together. And for decades now, 25 years, we have been close friends and still are. I think I've agreed with Leonard on most things, but once in a while we've disagreed. Sometimes it turns out he was right. Sometimes it turns out I was right about certain policy issues, certain political issues. We have disagreed in the past. Nothing major, nothing big, but we've definitely had our disagreements. But on the big issues like voting and stuff, for the most part, we've agreed. I find it fascinating that many people citing, using Leonard Peikoff as now an authority for them in terms of voting for Trump. These are the same people who probably, condemned Leonard when he advocated for voting for John Kerry in 2004 or for Bill Clinton in 1992. Both of those calls by Leonard I supported and I agreed with. But many people out there did not. And they were very upset with Leonard and with the Institute for supporting Leonard and all of that for, particularly in 2004, for advocating for voting for John Kerry. I indeed, in my first election as a U.S. Citizen, voted for John Kerry in 2004, partially based on agreeing with Leonard Peikoff's assessment of the political situation and the long-run implications of having George Bush serve another 4 years. And I have to say that looking back on it, I was absolutely right in voting for John Kerry, and Leonard was absolutely right for advocating for that. Over the last 4-5 years, since Leonard has retired, we have not talked much politics. We've stayed close friends. We have not talked much politics, although it became obvious to me, and Leonard has told me this, and we have discussed it somewhat, that he has a much more positive view of Trump than I do. We disagree on Trump. We disagree on Trump's performance in office, and we disagree about whether one should vote for Trump or not, and the importance of voting for Trump in this coming election. Yeah, we disagree. I've known this for 3 years at least, that I disagree with Leonard Peikoff on this. But I have to think for myself. You have to think for yourselves. I think Leonard will tell you that his decrees are not commandments. His opinion is not. Everything has to be first-handed. You should be first-handed. The fact that we disagree about Trump means that we don't talk politics that much when we get together, but we are still close friends. And over the last few weeks, I have spent many hours with Leonard, listening to music, swimming in the pool, chatting, talking. Politics comes up here and there, but we have not devoted our discussions to politics. Life is rich. Politics is not the funnest topic to talk about in the world. It's not what I enjoy particularly, and I don't think Leonard enjoys, at least when he risks me disagreeing with him. Right? So I risk him disagreeing with me. Either way you want to look at it. I have immense respect and love for Leonard Peikoff, in spite of the fact that he's going to vote for Trump. And I think, and somebody can ask him, that he has immense respect and love for me, in spite of the fact that I will not vote for Donald Trump. The day before Leonard made this announcement about him voting for Trump, I was at his birthday party. A wonderful violin recital in his home. And it was fantastic. It was beautiful. It was great. And we had a great time together. And we talked a little bit about politics, and that was fine. And we moved on. So as far as I know, so this is the second question, is when Peikoff referenced the person who said Trump voters couldn't be objective. So first, he never said in the video that he's proudly voting for Trump. He never used the word proudly. I mean, he's obviously adamant about voting for Trump. That's Leonard, right? And I've no problem with that. I've never had a problem with anybody voting for Trump. It depends on your reasons. And when he said that somebody said that if you're an objectivist, you couldn't vote for Trump, and he thought that was crazy and he was mad at that. I don't know if he was referring to me. Now, he wasn't referring to me because I said that, because I never actually said it. I never actually said that. But there are a lot of people who don't like me, if you haven't noticed. Some of them might even have Leonard's ear. And is it possible that somebody told Leonard that I said it? It is. I don't know. I don't think so, because I have a feeling he would have told me. Leonard has no problem, has not had problems in the past telling me I'm full of it. And he's usually been right when he said that. And if he told me, did you say this? I would have said it. No, I actually didn't say that. Here's what I did say. And that would have been fine. So I don't think he's referring to me. Certainly he's not referring to me firsthand. He might be referring to me. Because somebody whispered in his ear and somebody gave him wrong information. And again, there are plenty of people out there who would love to turn Leonard Peikoff against me. I don't think they're going to be successful. I think our relation is stronger than that. And and those of you, right? In those of you who, anyway, I think our relationship is stronger than that, and we will, and we'll get, this election is going to be over in a few weeks. This election is going to be over, and the truth about a lot of this stuff is going to come out in the future. Tzvika, thank you. And look, Tzvika says you should think for yourself. He loves that statement. Yeah, I mean, you'd think, and Tzvika knows this, that is obvious. But you should think for yourself. And you should come to your own conclusions. And you should, and some of us are right and some of us are wrong. It's not that everybody's right. We're not subjectivists. It's not that everybody's right. But in applying objectivism, I've said this so many times, in applying objectivism to a mixed world, to a world in a mixed economy, to a world with a crazy political system as we have it today. It's complicated to apply those principles. And in this case, I think Leonard's wrong. And Leonard thinks I'm wrong. And one of us is right and one of us is wrong. We might never find out because there's no parallel universe where we can test these things out. And we might never have the discussion or the debates or the argument. Look, Leonard and I disagree about immigration. We know we disagree about immigration. I have the gall to say I disagree with Leonard Peikoff on immigration. And I know it takes a lot of gall, and it's not easy for me to even say because I hate to disagree with Leonard Peikoff. He's brilliant. And I have unbelievable respect and admiration and love for Leonard. So we disagree about immigration. Now, if you think about a disagreement about immigration, that is going to spill over to disagreement about Trump because a big part of Trump's agenda is an immigration agenda. So, you can go from there, and you can. I'm not going to try to ascribe reasons for Leonard, but you can extrapolate from that disagreement and other disagreements that we might have. But anyway, again, none of this changes the fact that we are friends. We would continue to have friends. We continue to be friends. I will not vote for Trump. I've advocated not to vote for Trump. I will continue to do so. I think a Trump victory would be a disaster for this country. I think a Biden victory, as we'll talk about in a minute, is going to be a disaster for this country too. It's a question of which disaster can we sustain, which disaster long-term is more harmful to the country. And I think a Trump victory is more damaging to the country than a Biden victory in the long run, not in the short run. The short run, Biden is clearly worse. So, we're going to talk about that in a minute. Let's see. So then without being too personal, what is the most memorable moment with Leonard Peikoff in your professional career with him? Wow. I mean, there's so many. I mean, I'd say that the most memorable moments with Leonard are when he's criticized me, right? Professionally, right? There are lots of personal memories that are really wonderful. But professionally, I'd say, there are two: when he's been most critical of me, and when he's been most complimentary on me. Those are the two that stand out. I'd say he was critical of me in my confusion papers when I was a student of his. He didn't hold back. He told me exactly what he thought of some of what I wrote. ARI still stands by its 2016 article about Trump, and I still stand by my views of Trump. Nothing from my perspective has changed about that. There's no corner to be in. But his being angry with me because of, and he would call me up a few days later and say that he was a little harsh. And he did that with a lot of the students. He would say he's harsh. Oh, wow, look at that. We made the $1,000. Ragnar, you are amazing. And that was, all of you were amazing. We made that in record time, I think. We made $1,000 of the Super Chat today. Another great day. You don't have to stop using the Super Chat. We can keep Leonard Peikoff. Those of you who don't know who I'm talking about. Leonard Peikoff, that's his last name. That was the $500 match that Ragnar of the Desert said at the beginning of the show that he would do for every dollar raised on the show, and we've made it to $1,000. Thank you, Ragnar. Thank you, all of you who participated and who contributed towards it. That is really, really fantastic. It's amazing. Let's see. And then, I remember a talk I gave once in Irvine. Maybe it was 2004, and basically Leonard, we met. He was at the talk, and we met a little bit after that, and he basically told me how terrible the talk was, and he was right, and he spurred me on to become a lot better, a lot better. So those are memorable professional things. The other parts are when the most pleasurable thing I've ever done with Leonard is professionally is. For example, I was there when Leonard wrote the full-page ad that we put in the New York Times after 9/11, and states that support terrorism. And I sat there with Amy Peikoff and with Leonard, and I can't say I edited Leonard Peikoff, but I made suggestions as he was writing. We did it. I can't remember the time frame, but we did it very quickly. I remember the three of us sitting in a room and Leonard writing and us crossing stuff out, moving things around and reshaping things until it came together in that amazing statement, end states. That was amazing fun. It's always been fun. You can find this on the internet. You can find places where I'm in a Q&A with Leonard, and that was stunning because he is the greatest in terms of answering questions. I thought he was the best ever in terms of understanding the question, getting to the core of it, and giving a great answer. So being sitting at the table on stage with Leonard Peikoff was to me like, whoa, this is amazing. This is my my intellectual hero, and my teacher and everything. And here I am sharing a stage with him. So those are the highlights of my professional career with him. And I'm sure I'm missing stuff, and I'm sure there's other things. So hopefully, I've said enough so that all the craziness out there about Trump and everything else calms down. Maybe not. We'll see. But it is what it is. All right. Let's see. What do we do now? So we have one super chat question about Biden. So let's talk about this, and then we'll get into what I think a Biden administration looks like, and the various negative things that could happen if Biden is there. And of course, you can keep using the super chat to either support the show or to ask a question. We have met our match with $1,000 coming in. Thank you, and send me. Thanks for the great answer about Leonard. Absolutely, I appreciate it. How did your lecture go in Connecticut? Yeah, let me just say that. How did your lecture go in Connecticut? It went great. I mean, I love giving those lectures. I got to talk in front of live people. You know what? This is great. I love you guys. But I'm tired of talking to my computer. I'm tired to look at the camera and talking to a microphone. Having real life people, seeing their faces, and feeling the energy in the room was so exciting. So much fun. It was great. So, I got in late Thursday night, drove up 2-hour drive up to Connecticut from JFK. In the morning, I got to follow another speaker who was excellent, talking about taxes and government spending and things like that. Really, 100% aligned. And then I got up and talked about capitalism and the history of capitalism and what is capitalism and individual rights and what individual rights are and where they come from. And it was amazing. And the audience was like, they were struggling with it. They were trying to figure it out. These were all conservatives, people who want to be involved in politics and quite conservative, older group. I'd say average age is probably 50, or 45, 50, but engaged and passionate. And it was a blast. We did about an hour talk, half an hour Q&A. Then I signed books. People actually came, and nobody wore a mask. It was, other than when you got up to do stuff, you had to wear a mask. But at the talk, nobody wore a mask. And I got to sign my book. Equal is Unfair. They got to buy the book. I got to sign it, and we sold out. With all the books I shipped there, was sold out. So that was nice as well. It was a great event. I always love these events. I do them in Connecticut. I do them in Connecticut and in Colorado, and they're just fantastic. So next month is in Colorado. Next month I fly to Denver to do it in Denver, and it's great. And on Wednesday I fly to Puerto Rico. So late next week I'll be doing my shows from Puerto Rico. I'm very excited about that. I'm looking forward to going back to my regular setup, having less technical problems, and also just being in Puerto Rico. I kind of miss it. Somebody said they'd love for me to come and give you guys a talk. Yeah, anybody who wants me to come and give a talk to their little group or whatever, I'd be happy to. And I'd be happy to. You got to just pay. It's $5,000 for me to come and give a talk to your group wherever you are. If you're in the United States, if it's overseas, it's more just because the flights are more expensive. But no, I'll pay all my expenses, $5,000 all in, for me to give a talk. All right. Okay, let's get to this topic. Let's talk about Biden and get it over with because it's not fun. Assuming Biden wins in a landslide, and that landslide destroys Trumpism, what can we do to get ready to step into the void created and give people a rational alternative? I mean, that's a great question. I mean, it assumes a lot of things because I don't think Trumpism is going to go away. I think the Trumpism, which is the real focus on nationalism, on industrial policy, on anti-trade, on anti-immigration, on and mixed in with religion, is not going away. I see its big advocates moving forward to be people like Tom Cotton, Josh Hawley, and Tucker Carlson. A kind of a leftist economic agenda with a nationalist right-wing social agenda. That's not going away, and the battle over that will continue, and we're going to have to be players in that battle to give ammunition to whatever better elements there are within the Republican Party that can fight that off. I think there are going to be 2 or 3 other elements within within the Republican Party. The Republican Party is basically going to have a massive internal civil war. There are the, quote, more libertarian aspects of the party, supposedly Rand Paul and supposedly Lee from Utah and maybe Massey in the House. Hard to tell where they go. I mean, I think most of them gave in completely, bought into Trumpism and lost all credibility. Ted Cruz used to be a part of that group, but Ted Cruz, I think, has lost all credibility, and I don't think Ted Cruz is going to be a force in the Republican Party in the future. Certainly not in a, quote, libertarian wing of it. There's another wing of the party, which is a relatively free market wing, a kind of a more traditional conservative fusionism wing that wants to collect kind of the libertarians with some religion, with some tough foreign policy, and that would be more the Nikki Haley wing of the Republican Party. I'm not sure who else to lump in there, but Sass. I don't know if you saw Sass. Sass came out. Ben Sass came out recently, really went after Trump. I think yesterday. So Sass, I think, is part of that wing. I think that's the solid, pretty good, not great, compromising, but basically people we can probably work with. Founding fathers ideas, and basic economic liberty. So Ben Sass, maybe Alan West, certainly Nikki Haley, people like that. I think they will be the most powerful anti-Trump force within the Republican Party. Then they're the people who basically are nothing Republicans. They don't stand for anything. McConnell, all the other Republicans, they stand for nothing. They're Trumpists when it's Trump's in, they were Bush neocons when it was Bush. That will be anybody to anything, right? They will adapt. They're complete chameleons. They stand for nothing. They are nothing, they are going to be the majority probably. That will swing with whoever's going to be ultimately win out. The rhinos, a lot of them are rhinos. I mean, they're whatever it is at the time, right? So I think the question is going to be who wins out in that battle. What can we do to provide them with intellectual ammunition? And I think that's the key. The key is to try to get to anywhere from anybody who will stand up against the Trumpists within the party, anybody who will stand for even just lip service to free markets, anybody who's willing to still say I believe in free market and free trade, and I'm pro-immigration, even if I'm not opening up the door, open immigration, but I'm generally pro-immigration. If that wing of the party, what we need to do is try to influence them and get in front of them. And we need to be there advocating for this idea, is to give them a sense that there's somebody out there who supports the better ideas that they have and will challenge them on the bad ideas that they have. But that's going to be very difficult for us to do because we're still so small. But I think you, on your local level, those are the kind of politicians you should be supporting. You should be avoiding the Josh Hawley type and supporting the Ben Sass type. Even though Ben Sass is religious, and I know he's religious, and he's quite religious, right? And avoiding the rhino type, and avoiding the we'll go along with anybody type. try to find the ones that are somewhat principled, somewhat I say. It's hard to be somewhat principled, but they're somewhat principled, and who are supporters of the Founding Fathers. I think that's essential. And supporters of free markets. Okay, another election question. I'm going to take the election questions that are $20 or more first. If Trump wins on day one, we can start advocating for Ben Sasse and Nikki Haley or other free market people. I don't think a Trump victory destroys the party completely. We can fight to move it to something better. I don't think so. I hope you're right. I hope you're right. But I think it's the end of Ben Sasse. I mean, you saw today that even somebody I don't like, but but what's his name from Pennsylvania, Toomey from Pennsylvania, is leaving the party. I not only do I think that what's going to happen is that Trump is going to lose, I think the Republican Party is going to be decimated in this election, and I think people are leaving. And you saw what happened to the Arizona senator that stood up to Trump. I mean, Ben Sasse is finished if Trump wins. Ben Sasse will be drummed out of the party. So Ben Sasse, I met Ben Sasse. Ben Sasse is much better than Mitt Romney. Much better than Mitt Romney. Ben Sasse is really versant in the Founding Fathers. He has a deep understanding of the role of government. Mitt Romney was a nothing. Mitt Romney was a rhino. He was a businessman, but he didn't have the intellectual stature or the knowledge. I mean, Ben Sasse knows a lot. I mean, again, he's religious and he's problematic in all kinds of ways. But in terms of his knowledge of the founders, his knowledge of ideas, his, I think, principled stand, he is far better than Mitt Romney. Christian, thank you. Really, really appreciate it. This is on top of the match we already have. So this is taking us well over $1,000. Thank you, guys. This is amazing. I really appreciate the support. This is the best super chat show we've had since early September. So I don't think Ben Sasse, Nikki Haley have a chance. Not only that, I believe that if Trump wins, Trump Jr. is going to be groomed for 2024. I think people like Tucker Carlson, Josh Hawley. I think you'll get a whole new group of congressmen and senators who are in that line of Trumpism, who are going to come to dominate. I think they'll purge the party of every last person who stood up to Trump, and it's going to be a very, very, very different political party in the future if Trump wins. So, and again, I that's my assessment. I might be wrong, and I'm sure you guys will point it out. If I turn out to be wrong, you'll point it out to me. But I just don't see any hope for the Republican Party. But look, if Trump wins, and I think that we will have then solidified two clear statist alternatives: a Republican Party that is clearly unequivocally statist, and a Democratic Party that we know is statist. That's it. That it's done. Somebody says, Ben Shapiro might run. Ben can't win. Ben can't win. He's a religious Jew. He is too good on economics. He's too free market. There's no way he can win. Yeah. So anyway, you guys can hope. You can vote for Trump and hope that the Republican Party can still survive in spite of that. But it will survive, but it will survive as a very different party. Very, very different type of party. So, and not a party that I think would serve our interest long term, not a party that I think serves American interest long term, not a party that can be an opposition party to the Democrats, to our galloping into statism, galloping into authoritarianism. That's what I think the consequence of a Trump victory will be. But if he wins, we will find out if I'm right or wrong. So that was that. Okay, this was a $50 question. I better take this. what is objectivist view on political concept of state? Please share your views on state in conjecture with issues of immigration. Look, this is a lengthy topic, and I could do a show on the Westphalian view of the state and its relationship to immigration, and of course, you can sponsor a show, $1,000. I will do whatever topic you want me to do. I mean, within reason. I will do. We've got a number of people who've already sponsored shows. I'm in the middle of this series on applying the objectivist ethics to life and business, which was sponsored by Troy from Australia, and he's already sponsored 2 other shows, and we'll be doing those in the future. Well, one I've already done, and one we'll be doing in the future. So you can certainly sponsor a whole show on this. I'll give you the super chat, relatively quick version of this. I mean, I think that the state is an improvement over, and the state having size, a state of size, is an improvement over the kind of city-state, completely dispersed, almost anarchistic existence that existed before states were around, where you had empires and you had constant wars and constant conflict and constant violence. I think one of the things that states did is because it became a monopoly over the use of force, it at least reduced the force inflicted by people within the state against one another. And it established a rule of law within a state that allowed for ultimately the creation of markets and the creation of capitalism. Ultimately, I'm not sure capitalism would have arisen. I don't think capitalism would have arisen in a kind of a stateless, pre-Westphalian kind of system. Now, I happen to think there are too many states, and this I've talked about this in the past. I think states should be larger. I think there should be more things like the European Union, not in its current form, because I think the current form is awful. But I think broadly speaking, I think there should be more confederations of states so that we increase the rule of law, a common law, over larger and larger pieces of territory. I don't believe in one state for the whole world. I think there should be some competition. How many states is beyond the scope of my knowledge. Should it be 50? Should it be 25? Should it be 100? I don't know. I don't see any reason why there should be 200 and something states. I think a lot of the wars and destruction that exists today are because of this, what Ayn Rand called balkanization, where every little tribe wants its own state. So I think the borders should be, states should be big. I think Europe should be a state. There's no reason why Europe cannot be a confederation or republic, which every one of the existing states in it becomes a state within a republic or something like that. So I do think states are important. I'm not an anarchist. I strongly believe that you need a monopoly over the use of force by government. And I think there is huge advantages in having a common law, a law, assuming it's good, I don't hold this if the law is bad, over large geographic areas, because that is a facilitator of growth of knowledge, of growth of trade, and human well-being. Civil wars are less likely than wars between states. I think we've seen that there's been a steady decline in violence throughout human history, and that I think the creation of the state was part of that decline in the violence. In terms of immigration, I think that in an ideal situation where you've got, 50, 100, whatever states they are, that are basically free, or some of them are free, I think you would have open immigration. That is, the state is not an ethnic state. What unites a state is not ethnicity. What unites a state is not something called culture, though culture will evolve within a state and will become an identity for the state. And if it's a good culture, then as immigrants come in, they'll adopt that culture. But I think that the essential characteristic of the state is the rule of law. The essential characteristic of a state is that there is one rule of law across the entire, within the boundaries of the borders. A state is not about people. It's not about ethnicities. It's not about race. It's about a common rule of law, which I think over time creates a common culture. But when people come in and adopt this new rule of law for them, they immigrate, then they would be part. So I am for open immigration within the context of the state. Open immigration where the government screens for potential violators of individual rights. It screens to exclude criminals, terrorists, and people carrying infectious disease, which I guess is relevant these days. But other than that, leaves us alone. The state only role is the protection of individual rights, and there's no individual rights being violated by immigration. Let me say that again. There's no individual rights being violated by somebody crossing a line, by moving from one system of law to another system of law, which is what the line represents. So as long as they are not a criminal, as long as they're not a leech, a parasite, and so on, then they're welcome. Now, that is the ideal. Now, how do we get to the ideal? What kind of immigration policy should we have between now and our ideal situation? I've talked about in the past, and I would be happy to talk about in the future. Right? And this is not advocacy for multiculturalism. Multiculturalism is not many culture. Multiculturalism is an ideology that believes that all cultures are equal. I don't believe in that. But do I believe that the American culture can absorb the best of other cultures? Absolutely, and has for generations. So, it's, it is, the Westphalian state does not contradict the notion of free immigration, or open immigration, or relatively open immigration. Somebody says, while I'm listening and watching, this guy, Martin, is watching Rudy Giuliani speak about what he's found. What he's found regarding the Biden, how can anyone vote for this organization is beyond belief. Well, how can anybody take Rudolph Giuliani seriously is beyond belief. Rudolph Giuliani is an evil SOB. There are very few people in this world that are more despicable, ugly, and have done damage to this country more than Rudolph Giuliani, who is a little fascist in and of himself, a political and social climber who climbed over some of the most productive people in America and who used his position as the Attorney General for the Southern District of New York to do some of the most horrific, horrible, disgusting things on Wall Street that anybody has ever done. He's worse than a socialist. So, okay, I mean, you listen to Rudolph Giuliani because he has a long track record of being just a great human being. Just a great human being. Some of you should read the book Payback about what Rudolph Giuliani did to Wall Street in the 1980s. You should read Payback to find out what Rudolph Giuliani did to one of my heroes, Michael Milken, in the 1980s. And then tell me I should listen to anything Rudolph Giuliani talks about. Rudolph Giuliani is scum. And even maybe he took on some bad guys, he took on the good guys. Much, much, much more evil to take on the good guys than any good you might do by taking on the bad guys. So he will never live down. He will never be forgiven, in my book, by me at least. You guys can do whatever the hell you want. He will never be forgiven by me for what he did to Michael Milken. Ever. Wow, Jason, thank you. Wow, this is quite a day. All right, I'm going to take some other questions about politics. Was Barry Goldwater better than Ronald Reagan? Some historians say if JFK hadn't been assassinated, Goldwater would have won 1964. I don't know if he would have won, but I think Barry Goldwater is the best Republican put on the ballot since, since Calvin Coolidge in the 1920s. So Barry Goldwater was better than Ronald Reagan. He was relatively secular. He was much more free market than Ronald Reagan on every issue. Barry Goldwater, I think, was better than Ronald Reagan. As good as Ronald Reagan was, as inspiring as Ronald Reagan could be in his speeches, I think policy-wise and philosophically, Barry Goldwater was much better. And this is why, remember, that Ayn Rand did not vote for Reagan. She abstained in that election. She refused to vote for Reagan or for what's his name? Jimmy Carter. I was thinking Clinton. And she did not only vote for Barry Goldwater, she actually actively supported Barry Goldwater in spite of having reservations, which she wrote about. But she supported Barry Goldwater. She didn't support Reagan. She despised Reagan. That's Ayn Rand. Why are Americans so passive-aggressive? Those indirect expressions of hostility to get you to act a certain way drive me crazy. Does this come from America being a more Christian culture? Europeans and Israelis are more explicit when they're mad at you. Yeah, I think that's right. One of the things that really surprised me when I came to America was how Americans don't actually tell you what they think straight up. They do act in this very strange, passive-aggressive way. If an American tells you, yeah, that's interesting. Usually it means they didn't like it, but they don't want to tell you they didn't like it. Just tell me they didn't like it. Like Zvika, who gave some a significant super chat earlier, is a good friend of mine who's Israeli. And if I say something stupid, Zvika will call me up and say, Yoran, you said something stupid. He won't say, that was interesting what you said. Kind of interesting. Right? No, he's Israeli. He tells you what he thinks. And that's why he's one of my best friends. Right? Because he tells me what he thinks. So says speak up, support Trump, so would I, man. I'll just say this for whatever it's worth. Again, you guys make your call. Leonard voted for Reagan, as far as I know, in 1980. Ayn Rand did not. So Leonard and Ayn Rand have not always agreed on who to vote for president. So you guys have all the answers. You know exactly what Ayn Rand would do. You know exactly why Leonard Peikoff does what he does. You guys are so smart and knowledgeable, much more than I am, obviously. I don't think Europeans are more explicit. Like Europeans, like not Scandinavians. So no, Israelis are more explicit. Europeans, no, not at all. Maybe Southern Europeans, but not Northern Europeans. No, not Svika Peak. Jesus. I agree with your views on Trump, but seems like we're nearing the point of no return with the Biden presidency and Democratic control of the president. I just moved out of San Francisco. I'm very familiar with the insanity of the left. Yeah, if you lived in San Francisco, you certainly are. We're all familiar with the insanity of the left. But, in spite of what I think, in spite of what you think, I don't think it matters. I think the left is going to win. Right? That's at the end of the day, as I said, and I've said before, you have to think for yourself. You have to think for yourself. You have to figure it out for yourself and decide what you want to do based on your values and based on the best understanding of the current political situation, the future of America, philosophy and its ideas, and you make decisions for yourself. But don't vote for Trump because Leonard Peikoff said you should. Don't vote against Trump because I said you should vote against Trump. Don't vote because any authority told you anything. Vote because you rationally, logically have decided that is the vote that most makes sense given the circumstances. That is what objectivism asks of you. Think, God, the one virtue, if you have to boil down all the virtues in objectivism to one, it's think. But so many of you. Anyway, how How does Trump's presidency relate to Peacock's prediction at the end of DIM about M2 taking over America? Is Trump's presidency an example of the coming M2? I think so, and I actually told Leonard this, that I think it is. I think that Trump is not an M2 and can't lead us to an M2, but Trump is creating an environment in which that will come to fruition. I think people like Josh Hawley, even Tucker Carlson, I think are M2s and are capable of bringing about an M2 America and leading America towards an M2. And I think that Trump has made them possible, has given them fire, has given them a cause, and I think that that has emboldened them. And by the way, again, that is I told this to Leonard. I'm not voting for Biden. Somebody's asking. If I was going to vote, I wouldn't vote for either one of them, but I would not vote for Trump under any circumstances. Would I vote for Trump? But I would not vote for Biden either. I would not vote, just like I didn't vote last time. I didn't vote for Hillary and I didn't vote for Trump. I sat it out. This time I can't vote. I'm not allowed to vote because I'm a resident of Puerto Rico, and as a resident of Puerto Rico, I cannot vote. QAnon is a good example of what the Republican Party is becoming. It's becoming a QAnon, a conspiracy theory-like political party. That's the Trumpist wing of and that's part of this M2 phenomena. I think that's right. I think it's all setting it up for that. But I'm not going to vote for Biden. But I understand if people do vote for Biden. Not because they're voting for Biden, but because they're voting to make sure that Trump doesn't win. And I can understand people who don't want Trump to win. Absolutely. So I'm Svika's asking in Naama's name, what is the point of no return, the time to leave the United States? I don't think we're there. I really don't. I know it feels that way. I know a Biden victory feels that way, and I haven't even gotten to the point. We haven't even gotten to the point where I haven't explained what I think will actually happen under a Biden administration, which I'm going to do in a minute. As soon as I ban this guy, because I'm sick and tired of this racist being on my remove. No, I don't want to remove. Anyway, I keep clicking on the wrong button. Sorry, guys, because the chat keeps moving on me. There we go. Put him in timeout. There we go. I think that worked. I didn't want to hide you. Sorry, Corey. I didn't intend to hide you. I apologize. I was trying to put Mark Collins on timeout, and the thing kept moving. Anyway, look, the time to move out of America is, and I don't know where you would go. That's part of the problem. Where do you go? But what would it take to give up on America? What would it take to say it's gone? Well, two different views. One is civil war. Constant, ongoing, hot violence on the streets. And not just in Portland, but an active engagement between left and right in the streets of America, widespread across many, many parts of the country. With nobody able or willing to do anything about it. Basically, a civil war. If a civil war breaks out, it's time to look for somewhere else to live. I don't want to be in the midst of a civil war, particularly when my expectation is that I hate both sides. Both sides. Martin asks, I'll get to your question in a minute, Martin. Although you should be on the super chat, not on Facebook. To finish that up, first, civil war, you got to get out. Second, let's say they nationalize the healthcare system, which I think would happen with Republicans or Democrats. I don't think it matters. Then where are you going to go? Every country in the world has a national healthcare system. Maybe Switzerland, Singapore have slightly better healthcare systems because they still have elements of privatization in them. But where do you go? So I'm going to stick around until the country becomes either authoritarian, that is a dictator, They basically either do away with the vote or the vote becomes superfluous because, like in Russia, Putin just decides he's won, and no matter what the vote is, he's won. Or that people are just voting for the same guy over and over again. Term limits are gone for the presidency, and it's just clearly a dictatorship, like Russia, China. Well, China's worse, but like Russia. Like they have elections, but they don't really count. When they start controlling free speech, and I consider going after Twitter and Facebook by the government is controlling free speech. When they do that and they start really clamping down on political speech online and in a variety of different forums, not by private companies, by the government doing that, that's when you got to start thinking about leaving. So free speech, voting. When voting becomes meaningless, because the same guy gets elected every time, doesn't matter who you vote for. Or if there's civil war, then it's time to leave the country. Martin says, you're making a living from political debate, but you're not voting. I just don't understand your decision. You're supposed to vote for a party organization that best represents your political views. Yes, I am. I would vote for a political party that best represents my political views. But what if neither party represents any part of my political views? I despise the political views expressed by Trump and by the Republican Party. And I despise the political views expressed by the Democratic Party. They are, you could say, well, vote for the lesser of two evils. But what if both are so evil that you can't vote for either one of them? I probably would have voted for Boris Johnson in England. I don't like Boris Johnson, but Boris Johnson, at least then, I'm not sure it's played out very well. He seemed like he would be reasonable, and he seemed like, at least in some areas, he supported something I believed in. But the Republican Party, as constituted today under Trump, does not support anything I believe in. So how am I supposed to vote for them? Now, I will be voting. Let's be very clear. I will go to the polls and I will vote. I will be voting in Puerto Rico, so I cannot vote for president. I will be voting for the governor of Puerto Rico. I have my candidate lined up. He's the better of the two. He's the lesser of two evils. He's not somebody who I completely reject. I will be voting for mayor of San Juan. I'll be voting for representative of Puerto Rico in the U.S. I'll be voting for people who, relatively speaking, at the margin, pro-business and pro-freedom. I'll be voting for the lesser of two evils, but they're not so offensive to me as the Republican Party has become and as the Democratic Party is. Somebody's asking if I know what's happening in Victoria, Australia. I don't. I'm sorry. I don't. Unless that's where you're under complete and utter lockdown, which is horrific. I mean, individual rights, everything is out the door. But that seems to be what Boris Johnson is doing in England. So it's not even a feature of right or left. It seems like both political sides are advocating for total lockdowns, which is pathetic and ridiculous. I'm not a conservative. Where am I conservative? There's nothing about these. There's not a conservative bone in my body. I'm not a conservative. And people who call themselves conservative, what do they mean? I'm a free marketer. Are conservatives free marketers? No, they're not. Not the conservatives I know. Not Donald Trump, not Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson better than Donald Trump. But certainly not Donald Trump. Is not a free marketer. Am I conservative? Do I believe religion has a place and whatever? No, I'm anti-religion. I'm an atheist. That's not conservative. Do I believe in gay marriage? Absolutely. So, I mean, what makes me a conservative exactly? I don't know. That I'm not a socialist? Is everybody who's not a socialist a conservative? No. I'm not a socialist, and I'm not a conservative. All right, let me say a few things about this election. It looks to me like Biden is going to win. I think there's a chance. There's a bigger chance that Biden wins in a relative landslide than there is for Donald Trump to win, in my view. And as a consequence of that, there is a really good chance, I think it's way over 50%, the Democrats win the Senate. They win 51 plus seats in the Senate, and that they expand their majority in the House of Representatives. Now, that is where I think this election is heading. That it's heading towards a complete dominance of the Democratic Party in American politics and the national scale, at least for the next 2 years. Martin says conservative is to conserve. I'm not for conservative. I am an original classical liberal. I am an original, well, I'm a pre-progressive progressive. I believe in progress. I believe in liberalism in its classical formulation, and I believe in the Founding Fathers. And the Founding Fathers, let me tell you, were not conservative. I don't believe in conserving institutions. I believe in capitalism. Capitalism is anti-conservatism. Capitalism is not conservatism. I mean, what Ayn Rand said about conservatives, Ayn Rand was unbelievably negative about conservatives and conservatism, which is, conservatism is, has no content. So no, I'm not a conservative. So I believe that the left is going to dominate this election. And by the way, if you had to name whose fault that is, the fault for that is Donald Trump. So one of Donald Trump's biggest sins is that he has made it possible for somebody like Joe Biden, a nothing, a nobody, a zero, to be elected president of the United States. Donald Trump has made it possible for the Republicans to lose the Senate. And to lose the Senate where senators in what are considered red states are going to lose to Democrats in red states. The Democrats are going to pick up states going to pick up seats, it looks like, in states that are Republican states. Trump has destroyed the Republican Party. And he has made it unelectable. And now I might be wrong, and you'll be able to call me if I'm wrong. I mean, we'll know in 2 weeks. We'll know 2.5 weeks. We'll know. But this is my claim that Trump has moved the party in a direction that is so and has run this country with such incompetence that Republicans will not vote for him. Many, we'll put it this way, independents and people who typically vote Republicans will not vote for him or for senators who supported him. And therefore, what you will get post-November 3rd or 4th is a Democratic sweep. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. You know, you can call me nuts. We will talk November 5th, maybe even November 4th at night. We will know whether I'm right or not, whether Democrats have won or not. And, you know, so this is one of those claims that is easy to fix. Somebody says Trump is going to win easily. We will find out very soon. We won't have to wait long. But if Biden wins, and they take the Senate, and they take the House, it's going to be a disaster. It's really, really bad. It's really bad for the country because it's going to legitimize certain leftist ideas that are unthinkable, that are horrible. It's going to bring to the forefront government's efforts in areas like healthcare to try to nationalize much of the healthcare efforts that we have. They are going to try to nationalize or try to control and try to reshape our energy industry, which is going to be horrific. And it's going to change the culture. It's going to embolden the worst elements of the left to try to move the party even further to the left, to try to move the Biden administration even further to the left. It's going to bring this critical race theory to dominance all over the place because those people have, quote, the moral high ground, to put that in quotation marks, because there's nothing moral about what they advocate. But they, within the left, they are the more consistent parties. They will constantly move the left towards a worse and worse position. Existential, in terms of policy, I don't think the world will end. They'll raise corporate taxes. Corporate taxes were lowered by Trump, so they're raising them. The proposal is to raise them to less than what they were when Trump lowered them. So somewhere in between, halfway. Big deal. It's not going to be good, but it's not terrible. And you can see that the market doesn't believe it's terrible by the fact that the stock market's up in spite of the fact that all betting markets, have Donald Trump 80-20 losing to Biden. In spite of that, stock markets are up because the stock market doesn't think that a Biden victory is going to have that big of an impact on the economy. And I agree with him. I think the economy's screwed no matter who wins. We're in for low economic growth, stagnation for a long time, no matter who wins. And then the battle's going to be, can Republicans retake the House or retake the Senate in 2 years? And to me, that election is going to be much more important than this election. Because divided government is not that bad. So, Martin here continues with Margaret Thatcher was a conservative. She turned our country around. Yeah, Margaret Thatcher was fantastic. I love Margaret Thatcher, relatively speaking. Margaret Thatcher was a conservative. But she wasn't a free marketer. She was okay. She was the best politician we've had probably since Coolidge in the 20s. Better than Ronald Reagan. And she probably, if she had the freedom, she probably would have done a lot more than she set out to do. But she's not my ideal. She's great, but she's not my political party. I would have voted for Margaret Thatcher. I would vote for Margaret Thatcher right now. But Trump is no Margaret Thatcher. Neither is Biden. I think that's kind of obvious. If Margaret Thatcher was on the ticket right now, I would do everything I could to make sure that I could vote for her. I mean, Margaret Thatcher is a giant as compared to any politician today. So because Margaret Thatcher was a conservative, I don't vote for conservatives. Some conservatives are good, like Margaret Thatcher. Some conservatives are lousy. And some Republicans, like Donald Trump, are lousy. So there's all kinds of people on the right, if you will. I'm not going to vote for somebody I think is really, really bad. Now, Seth thinks that Trump is better than Thatcher. Seth is completely, and I've told him this before, is completely delusional, and he's unconnected, unmoored from reality. Thatcher was a giant. Trump is closer to Thatcher than Biden in some ways, and in some ways he's further away. And it doesn't matter. It's not like some spectrum and you position where they are relative. There are all kinds of issues on which you evaluate these things. I've spoken for hours and hours and hours and hours why I think Trump is so bad. And, you don't have to agree with me. And I get it that you don't have to agree with me. You're not agreeing with me. That's okay. What do I think of Churchill? I'm a huge fan of Churchill's. I'm a huge fan of Churchill during World War II. I think what Churchill did in World War II was heroic, was magnificent, was amazing. Churchill was no free marketer. Churchill was no believer in capitalism. He hated socialism, but he didn't like capitalism. Churchill was, in many respects, a mixed economy central planner. And in some of his work as in the colonies was probably not that admirable. But what Churchill did in World War II wipes all that out. I mean, he was so heroic, rallied the country to such an extent, was so courageous, so amazing, that you've got to be pro-Churchill. I mean, and just listen to his speech. His speech is fantastic. It was amazing. His speeches. Oh, Seth called me a nut job. Good. I mean, I take it as a compliment when Seth Martinez calls me a nut job. Right? He used to be a big fan of mine, huge fan of mine, and then Trump got between us. Story of my life. Trump getting in the way of people admiring me. It's sad. You got to come over to Super Chat to ask questions because I'm overwhelmed with questions, and I have to. People have paid money for these questions. I have to answer them first. All right, let's go through this. So, by the way, economically, I don't think a Trump presidency will be a disaster if Republicans can regain the Senate or the House in 2 years, and that should be the focus. So, the focus of the Republican Party should be overwhelmingly to figure out how to win elections in 2022, win the House back, win the Senate back, just one of them, just so you have veto power over stuff that Biden and the Democrats will come up with, and I'll come up with some doozies. All right. Mainly doing this for the Ragnar match. I don't have any big questions, so I'll ask any thoughts on the show DuckTales, particularly Scrooge McDuck. Scrooge McDuck is a character. I mean, I love Scrooge McDuck as a character. I think he's fun. I thought he's very entertaining. Of course, he has a very, very false view of capitalism. Remember Scrooge McDuck's big vault with all the money he has, and he likes swimming with the money. And that gives a very, very false view of what wealth is, what investment is, what rich people do with their money. Rich people don't swim with their money. Rich people actually invest their money, and their money is productive. It's a productive. The gold in a free market might sit in a bank's reserves, but it's not the essence of what people do. This is why I think people have this idea that rich people hoard. Because of the kind of Scrooge McDuck portrayal. So I'm a fan because it's entertaining, but it's obviously economically completely false. And by the way, there were some episodes of Scrooge McDuck that were very good, where he teaches his nephews the value of saving, where he teaches his nephews the value of earning money versus just spending money. So a lot of those cartoons with Scrooge McDuck and his nephews were very, very good, and I highly recommend them. It's just teaching people about money and how to relate to it. Would you say that intellectual property rights, patents, is a legitimate dispute within objectivism, like a dispute about what leads to proper freedom, or is it fundamentally disagreement with the objectivist philosophy? I think it's a disagreement with the objectivist philosophy, a disagreement about the nature of property and property rights. So I wouldn't say you're not an objectivist because of it, but I think in this you are contradicting the objectivist philosophy, and you need to really think about it. It's not one of these things where I could say, well, it's legitimate within objectivism to disagree with, because very much depends on context of your knowledge, and it relates to a projection of the future, which is so hard to tell. No, intellectual property rights are part of objectivism. The idea that intellectual property rights exist is definitely part of objectivism. It's great to see my comments entertaining people so much. I mean, whenever we do politics and we talk about Trump, people are horrified, really horrified by what I have to say. But what's wrong with Kant's categorical imperatives? They just don't exist. Isn't that in some way the same as universal principles objectivists advocate? No. And the fundamental difference, and there are a lot of differences, and you should ask this question really of philosophers, but the fundamental difference is that the objectivist principles are induced from reality. They can be proven in a sense that they can be linked back to human life, why they're essential to the preservation or furtherance of human life. Categorical imperatives they're just stated as existing. There's no proof. There's no way to link it to the facts of reality. There's no way to link it to something real. So they're completely floating, and that's their purpose. They're completely floating abstractions. They're commandments. Thou shalt do this. Why? Because Kant said so. Or God said so. Or conventional morality says so. But Rand's principles, there is a why, and there is a whole chain of reasoning to show you why, and to show you why these particular principles, and only these particular principles, are essential for human survival and human flourishing. And Kant doesn't do that. No philosopher does that. Ayn Rand's philosophy starts with the facts of reality. It starts with observing the facts about human nature, observing the fact of what leads to human success and what leads to human failure, and then inducing from them a principle, and then testing that principle out, making sure, integrating with the rest of the knowledge and making sure that it's consistent with the purpose of principles, which is to guide one's life in the pursuit of values, in the pursuit of a better life, in the pursuit of happiness. Okay, what did you think of the movie Gran Torino? I liked it. It was a Clint Eastwood movie. I liked the movie. Old curmudgeon guy, lost meaning in his life, cynical, skeptical, and gains, I think, kids. It was a kid. I can't remember the exact context, but basically, now I don't like the ending, and the ending is too Christian for my liking, and I won't give it away, but it's too Christian for my liking. But generally, I liked it because it showed somebody rediscovering values and fighting, being willing to fight for those values and risk his life for those values because he now had a purpose in life. It shows the need for purpose and the need for values and how awful life is when you don't have values and how wonderful life is when you do, even if it's short. I'm hinting at the ending. Do you think people on welfare are bitter and angry because they're alienated from the means of production? It seems that the Marxist phase has some merit. No. Well, I mean, they're alienated from the means of production by the welfare state. There's nothing about the means of production that alienates them. What alienates them from the world is the fact that people don't expect them to work, that they can live on the dole, and that they're told that they're being exploited. So no. Too Christian. Don't remember how he dies at the end? I said that. I shouldn't have said that. Anyway, I've given away the ending. Let's keep America great, Trump 2020. Trump has made America a lot less great than it was 4 years ago. A lot less. Oh my God. It's so hard to understand the world in which you guys live in. I don't know. I look at the world. I look at everything in the world, and I don't know anything that's better today than it was 4 years ago. And the management, the leadership failure of the last 6-7 months or the last 9 months is so significant. I don't know how you can ignore it. Okay, do you think people I did that. So I don't think that Marxist has any merit. I think that people are alienated, but they alienated because of the intellectuals. They alienated because they've been taught capitalism is responsible for everything, but then what is the solution? And the solution is them to be on the dole, and being on the dole is the most demoralizing thing you can do to a human being. What is operetta and what is its value to you? Operetta is musical theater. It's compared to opera. It's light, happier, with almost always a happy ending. The music is more melodic and light. It's beautiful. It's very benevolent. Ayn Rand really loved operetta, as does Leonard Peikoff. And I enjoy operetta. It's not my favorite, but I enjoy it. I've watched operetta with Leonard. Actually, the only times really I've watched operetta with Leonard Peikoff, and it's terrific. It's life affirming. It's joy, full of joy. It's full of beautiful melodies. The stories are silly, but okay. They're not completely ridiculous, and generally there's a love of life embedded in the music and in the singing and in the conclusion of the operas. We just watched an operetta. They're all love stories. Almost all of them are love stories, and the lovers fall in love. They separate because of some misunderstanding, and then they get together. It's basically a story of every operetta. This one was set in a circus, and it just had a lot of fun elements to it. It was just enjoyable to watch. Lehar is a good operetta writer. The favorite of both Leonard and Ayn Rand, and is Emmerich Kalman, with a K, Kalman, Kahlman. Mike Berliner, who used to be the executive director of the Ayn Rand Institute before I had the job, is a big operetta fan. Also loves operetta and is a real operetta what do you call it? Aficionado knows a lot about operetta. So yeah, I definitely encourage you to listen, see if you like it, see if you enjoy it. Rez, wow, thank you. That's a generous contribution. A small business in Melbourne was going bankrupt and decided they had to open up, all the while putting strict COVID guidelines for their customers to follow. They will find $10,000 Australian is a long way from understanding individual rights. It's Corey and another guy, Corey. Yeah, I mean, what's happened in Melbourne is just stunning to me. I thought Australia was a much freer country and would not tolerate this kind of stuff. But wow, I mean, Melbourne is basically shut down completely. And people are being fined for opening their business, $10,000, which basically destroy a small business. Opening up has been criminalized. Not wearing a mask has been criminalized. Going out, I mean, it's real fascism. That I would have never expected that in Australia. But you're seeing real fascism in Melbourne. It's just worse than anything I've seen in the U.S. in terms of how strict they are and in terms of enforcement. I've seen videos of people arrested in their homes and women dragged to prison, to courts, away from their children. Just horrible, horrible stuff. Okay. But this is what happens when you get authoritarians. And this is, somebody says Victoria is a police state. Yeah, I mean, I think that's Melbourne. Is that Melbourne? Yeah, that's what I understand. And to see that in a Western country, I mean, it's worse than England. It's worse than what's going on in Europe. It's surprising that would be true of Australia, of all places. I guess I just didn't know much about. I mean, New Zealand did something very similar, not quite as bad. And she's just been reelected in a landslide. So what's amazing about authoritarianism in the West now is it is what people want. It is what people want. People want authoritarianism. And it's sad. Somebody says that Queensland in Australia is not being run like that, and it's much better. What city is in Queensland? What city would I know is in Queensland? Alvin writes, your Equal is Unfair college lecture on YouTube was transformative for me. I've tried to get so many friends to listen to it, but they can't even stand the title of Equal is Unfair. Well, thank you. I mean, that is makes my day. Makes my day the fact that you were transformed by that lecture. That's what I give the lectures for. It's to try to get some of you. Who's in Queensland? Brisbane. Brisbane's in Queensland. All right. What's the westernmost province or in state in Australia? I'm not sure. Okay. Who do you most want to debate? Who do I most want to debate? Wow. I mean, that's a tough one. I mean, I would like to debate Yanis Varoufakis from the left. I'd like to debate Yanis Varoufakis. I'd like to debate on the right. I'd love to debate somebody like Josh Hawley or Tucker Carlson, but in a formal debate, not on TV. I'd like to debate, wow, I mean, I just can't. I would like to see an objectivist debate somebody like Sandel, who's this philosophy professor at Harvard, or Fish, what's his name? I forget people's names. I'd like to see somebody debate Sam Harris on free will. I'd like to see an objectivist debate Sam Harris. I don't know if it should be me. I'd love to debate somebody like Jordan Peterson on economics, on not on these psychological theories and stuff. Not even on epistemology, but on I'd like to debate him on things like I wouldn't mind debating Shapiro on religion or on ethics. I did that a little bit in the thing. I'd like to debate Jordan Peterson on ethics and on just inequality, for example. He's got a terrible view of inequality, and on economics just more broadly. I don't know. Lots of people I'd love to debate. Most economists I don't know if I want to debate Krugman. He's too dishonest. But a lot of a lot of economists I would like to debate. So there's no shortage of people for me to debate. I'd like to be on Joe Rogan's show. Somebody asked when my Lex Friedman video will be on. I don't know. I mean, I'm looking every day. Any day now. Put it that way. Any day now. Any day now. So it's good to see that some parts of Australia are better than others, that not the whole country has become fascist. All right, you got 4 super chat questions. I want to get through them, and then we're done for the day. I think I've got dinner waiting for me. Somebody says objectivism is reason, not cult. Absolutely. What did I start the show for today? Think for yourself. When FDR was elected, he destroyed the economy and the people kept re-electing him. This is the danger. See, with Biden, the leftist ability to spin reality to keep enacting bad policy. Trump will not get away with it. Well, you see, your history is not exactly right. When FDR was elected, the economy was already destroyed. What FDR did is he put together short-term policies that seemed to work for a little while and then turned out not to work. So he kept the economy low, but the stock market did very well in FDR's first term. It rebounded dramatically. And for a while, unemployment went down, but then it went up again. So the reason FDR was reelected was partially because he was so convincing, but also partially because his economic policies seemed to work. Things were so bad when he took over that he seemed to have at least stabilized things. I don't think that would happen to Biden. I mean, look what happened with Obama. 2 years in, he lost the House and the Senate, I think. 2 years in, he lost the House and the Senate. And Republicans held on to the House and Senate since then. It's only under Trump that Republicans lost the House 2 years ago and are about to lose the Senate. But under Democrats, Republicans do very well in the House and Senate because they can draw a sharp contrast. The intellectual quality of political dialogue is low. Past fights on principle replaced by fights over debate moderator bias. How did intellectual quality degrade while overall knowledge increased? Intellectual quality degraded because the idea of principle, pragmatism took over our politics. Pragmatism took over our interactions. There are no principles. There are no ideas. There's nothing guiding people. If you actually boil down from an actual perspective on the world, there's very little difference between mainstream Republicans and mainstream Democrats. It's just a matter of degree. Now, the differences between the far left and people and the far right, maybe. But there's no differences between the middles. Right? And so once you don't have principle, then what are you debating? There are no principles. The Republican Party doesn't believe in free market as a principle. It doesn't believe in liberty as a principle. It doesn't believe in rights, individual rights as a principle. You will never find individual rights in the content of a speech by a Republican or a Democrat. So once you abandon principles on left and right, what are you left with? You're left with nothing to talk about except accusations, incriminations, and who the moderator, bias, this, bias, that, all this garbage. Because there's no principles to talk about, because nobody believes in principles. Random off-topic questions. You've talked about a spy TV show you like, not The Spy. I think it's British, and you said it was gritty. What's the name of it? It's called The Bureau, and it's French. It's French. The Bureau. It's excellent. It's very Jean Le Carré-like, very thoughtful, very slow, very deep, but very gritty and a hero, and it's really good, worth watching. The Bureau. It is difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on not understanding it. There goes both left and right. Well, I don't know exactly what you mean. Why is their salary dependent on understanding it? If they understood free markets, their salary would go up. If they understood free markets and willing to vote for it, their standard of living would go up. Their quality of life would go up. Everything would be better. So I'm not sure what it is, why that is, that it's the salary makes it difficult. Rez says, again, thanks for these shows. Now you have a better idea of what's happening in Victoria, Australia. You may know what a breath of fresh air these shows are. Thanks to you and other objectivists that like shows. My pleasure. Thank you. I mean, Seth doesn't agree with you completely. He says I've got Trump derangement syndrome, which is, as I've said before, is an anti-concept. Peikoff is a much better objectivist. Certainly, Peikoff is a much better philosopher than I am. And I don't know what a much better objectivist means, but he's a much better philosopher than I am. And I am, I'm not in competition with Leonard Peikoff around philosophy. All right. I think that'll make a show. I'm going to go get dinner. Thank you, Rez. I really appreciate that. Thank you, all of you, for listening. Thank you for wow, this was an amazing super chat. Thank you, Ragnar of the Desert, for an amazing challenge and a $500 match. We raised during the show well over $1,000. In spite of all the negative comments that people like Seth and others leave here, your financial support, you putting your money where your mouth is, means a huge amount to me. I mean, it basically means that there are people out there who do value what I do and do value what I'm talking about and do value what I say. There's so much negativity about me on social media right now. Huge amounts of negativity about me on social media right now. Your financial support, says that people out there value what I do in spite of all this negativity. And I thank you for that. I know it's difficult. I hope we don't have to talk a lot about politics between now and election, because the election will clear this all up, and there'll be a lot to talk about once the election is over and once we know what the outcome actually is, rather than trying to argue about what the future is going to be like. I expect if Biden wins, we'll do a lot of shows that are going to be very anti-Biden. I expect to have Biden derangement syndrome during the Biden presidency. There's no question I will have Biden derangement syndrome during the Biden presidency. But again, I really, really, really appreciate all of you. So if you like the show today, please give it a thumbs up on the chat. We had a lot of live listeners today. This is great. So please give it a thumbs up. The same you can do in Facebook. You can show your appreciation by giving it a thumbs up. Of course, you can support the show at YaronBrookShow.com/support, or on Patreon, or on Subscribestar. I will be back tomorrow. We'll be doing a part 3 of the series on the objectivist ethics, its application to life and in business. It'll probably be earlier in the day than this. It'll probably be, we'll see, maybe at around noon or 1 o'clock tomorrow Pacific time. So we'll be doing it'll be a more philosophical show. It'll be about ethics. It'll be about productiveness. We'll talk a lot about this in the past, but we'll do a whole show around it. I really, really, if you have questions for me about business, about work, about what work is like, about choosing a profession, about dealing with coworkers, dealing with bosses, dealing with employees, and the whole concept of productiveness and its role in human life, then tomorrow's show is the time to do it. We'll be doing shows on honesty and integrity and pride and independence and all the virtues in the weeks to come. We'll also be doing a show. This is interesting. We'll be doing a show on the Christian, on the 7 deadly sins. Deadly sins? 7 sins, right? And the Christian virtues. So we'll be doing the virtues and what is considered a sin. So we'll be doing that as well. Stephen, thank you. You're on appreciation syndrome. I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of your weekend. I will talk to you tomorrow. Bye, everybody.